here's something different. Welcome to another Archie Sonic review and an episode of Forgotten Media, where I review and talk about some Archie Sonic comics you may or may not have heard of. I'm basically going to be talking about two forgotten Archie Sonic comics that not many people know about. I could talk about canceled story ideas for the Sonic comics, but I'll save that for another episode of Forgotten Media. So let's start off with a short one called Archie and Friends, a Halloween Tale, that was released around 1998. And as you can tell, this is mainly a crossover comic featuring Archie, Sonic, and Sabrina, even though it's more of a Sonic and Sabrina crossover. So let's start off with a story called Festival of Fantasy, as we open with Sabrina walking into Haley's Comics to pick up some Sonic comics for Salem, and some random kid named Stevie is surprised to see a girl in the comic shop. What, do they think comics are only for guys? That's pretty sexist. It's about as sexist as that stupid Dr. Pepper 10 commercial.
Dr. Pepper 10, it's not for women!
She tells him that she and some of her friends are into comics, and I guess she tries to do some kind of hocus-pocus magic on the comic to spring the characters to life, since she is a witch after all, but accidentally performs the wrong spell, and Sabrina and Stevie are sucked into the comic. They soon find themselves in Robotropolis, as they see Robotnik ready to attack Sonic and Knuckles with his army of SWAT bots. The two Mobians see Sabrina and Stevie and mistake them for Overlanders, humans who have 4 fingers and are biased against Mobians. So Sonic and Knuckles split up as Sonic tackles on Robotnik as usual, and Knuckles is ready to take care of the humans. Unable to explain what's happened, Sabrina uses her magic to send her and Stevie back into the real world, as well as taking Sonic and Knuckles by accident. So much for an epic battle. Sabrina remembers that she has to attend Veronica's Halloween party, and Cheryl Blossom is picking her up. Since she doesn't have a costume at the moment, she uses her magic to give her and Stevie some fancy costumes, but doesn't give Sonic and Knuckles any costumes, as she tells Cheryl that she's babysitting some kids in costumes. So they arrive at the party, and everyone's having a good time. Archie and the gang are playing some music, Josie and the Pussycats make a cameo, and all the guests are dressed up in some random characters from different medias, or some random comic book characters from the DC or Marvel universe or something. Sonic and Knuckles are finding it hard to fit in since they've never been to a party full of humans, or overlanders as they call them, especially when the food they serve is, well, not their type. Sabrina starts to worry as Reggie gets suspicious about Sonic and Knuckles, so she manages to find a telephone in the cavalry and calls Salem about the incident with the comic and how Sonic and Knuckles are in their world, and quickly teleports to Sabrina's location. He never turns down a chance when it comes to the Sonic comics. But suddenly, they notice Robotnik walking out, and before she tells Salem to send them back, Sonic and Knuckles see Robotnik coming and attack him. But it turns out it was just Jughead dressed up as Robotnik, and before things get even more awkward, Sabrina tells Salem to use some magic and send Sonic and Knuckles back to Mobius. And through a quick ending, Salem tells the readers that Sabrina made everyone forget about the Mobians at the party, all except for Stevie, because he's special. Either that or the fact that we're never going to see him again. And that he looks forward to see what else Ken Penders, Dan DiCarlo, and Spaz are coming up with. Well, I'll tell you one thing about Penders, Salem. You're going to be disappointed with the stuff he has planned. Very disappointed. And even though he doesn't work with the comics anymore, he's still gonna find ways to cut some holes into the series. So that was a Halloween Tale. It's very short since it happens to be one of those mini comics and only contains 12 pages. I will say it is pretty weak. The artwork is okay, but it seems like most of the time they keep giving Sonic blue arms, and of course this was a common issue back in the old days of the Archie comics. But for the rest of the story, it's just pretty bleh. The character Stevie was completely pointless and was more like some random kid along for the ride. Yeah, it's almost as bad as Sonic Live. The front cover looks like it's gonna be a spooktacular Halloween setting with creepy things, ghosts, demons, and all that jazz. But it turns out it's just some random Halloween party in the middle of the frickin' day. The cover lied to me! They could have done more with the story, like actually having Robotnik come to Sabrina's world and try to enslave it. And to think there would be another Sonic and Sabrina crossover in the future in one of the Sonic Super Specials, even though it's not canon to the Sonic or Sabrina comics, I think. There was another issue where it had Sonic and Sabrina in it, which was Night at the Haunted Comic Shop, but it was just an Archie and Sabrina crossover. Sonic and Knuckles only make a cameo in that story. But overall, the issue is pretty lousy, and it's not canon to any of the comic series made by Archie, and also, blame it on Ken Penders. It's no wonder why nobody remembers this issue, especially when it's really hard to find nowadays. Now let's move on to the next one, a lost story that wouldn't see the light of day until years later. Everything old is newt again. We open up with Robotnik demanding if there's any one of his badniks that has an idea of defeating Sonic, and it turns out Universe Salamander has an idea about getting revenge at Sonic after what happened to him in issue 4, and surprisingly, Robotnik agrees and gets the lizard all ready for battle. Meanwhile, we see the Freedom Fighters playing some kind of football game, as everyone is against Sonic, which should provide him a challenge. But nope, he manages to grab all of their ribbons and Antoine's boxers, even though he doesn't wear boxers. Well, it turns out their game will have to be cut short, because here comes Mechagodzilla! Universe Salamander, who grabs Sonic and sends him flying into the distance after performing a dropkick. We then find out that Sonic has landed in the middle of nowhere, where he's crashed into an ant's anthill. So he asks the ant for some help in getting back to where he was, and he tells him to run around in circles until he hits a familiar spot. This will probably lead to Sonic vomiting multiple times for being so dizzy before he gets back to Knothole. Meanwhile, the Freedom Fighters are doing their best to fight off Universe Salamander, as Rotor manages to pull out the Enlarger Reducer component that shrunk Universe Salamander down to size from before, and so he uses it against the lizard, but the shrinking mode only makes him bigger. Are you sure you had it on the shrink mode, Rotor? As Robotnik watches in glee, he quickly explains to Batbrain that he installed Universe Salamander with a fix flip. Basically, he's installed a chip that reverses the effects of the shrinking device and vice versa. So while Robotnik is already planning a victory party, it looks like the end for the Freedom Fighters. Luckily, Sonic rushes in to save the day by leaving some scars on the lizard's foot from his Sonic spin. Since the Enlarger Reducer device was destroyed in battle, Sally and Rotor head back to their hideout, while Sonic, Tails, and Bunny fight off Universe Salamander. Sally unveils a new gadget that she's recently got, the Nicole 7000, and uses it to help Rotor unleash his newest weapon, an Ultra Mega Enlarger device, and fires away at the lizard. And because of its reverse effects, Universe Salamander starts to shrink again. Unfortunately, the device is proven to be too powerful, as the lizard continues to shrink and shrink and shrink until it becomes so small that you need a microscope to see it. As Sonic can't think of a snappy comeback to this, Nicole suggests that this could be a sign of the future of what's to come. More serious challenges, new faces, dramatic consequences, and what about Robotnik's victory party? Well, since he already knows what happened to Universe Salamander, things aren't going to end well in Robotropolis. So that was the lost story. Probably no wonder why it was lost for a long time. The artwork is a bit choppy with the designs and a bit sloppy on coloring. Sally is brown and has black hair in the story. So is this supposed to be when she had her second or third color scheme? I don't know. The writing is actually good. Here we see Universe Salamander again, and also having Nicole foreshadowing the more serious events in the future. This was probably meant to be the last time they would have this cartoonish feel in the comics. This issue also features Nicole, who would become Sally's computer device and later best friend. It is a bit lousy on how they just threw her into the story just like that, but since this was cancelled, Nicole would be given a more proper introduction in the 48-page special, Sonic in Your Face. People have questioned if the story is canon due to Nicole's obscure appearance, and it has been stated by the current writer Ian Flynn that in some way, the lost story is canon to the main series, and that the Nicole 7000 bit was just a gag and not the real Nicole. So, if the story is canon, where does it exactly fit in the timeline? My only guess is that this issue could have taken place between issue 4 through issue 17, because issue 4 was when Universe Salamander was introduced, and issue 17 was when Nicole was still trapped inside that globe that crashed into the ground, which would later be given a more proper appearance in Sonic in Your Face. So that's the lost story. Not as top-notch as some of the others, but it's better than a Halloween's Tale. Surprisingly, the lost story can only be found on Sonic Archives Volume 5, where it contains reprints of issues 17 through 20, and they decided to throw in this lost story as a bonus as they rediscovered it in the vaults. So, since it's only in graphic novel format and they decide to finish it up with some of the old members, it's probably the reason why the artwork and coloring is a bit droopy in this story. Well, that wraps up this Archie Sonic review and Forgotten Media episode. So this is Melting Man 234 signing out. Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff you may or may not have heard of. And this time I've got a special guest for this subject. Will you introduce yourself, please?
Konnichiwa, everyone! This is Gianna1, also known as Gianna Forever, and it's great to be here on this episode of Forgotten Media.
Indeed, and today we'll be taking a look at a show that we both remembered known as Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go!
Try and say that 10 times fast.
This was an animated television show that was created by Ciro Nilly and premiered on ABC Family and Jetix on September 18th, 2004. This was a show in the US and the artwork was done by the Answer Studio, a studio known for their work in making their version of anime. And it's interesting that the show also aired in Japan as well.
So basically it's similar to Teen Titans and Transformers Animated. It looks like anime, but it's not. Now, let's talk about what the show is about.
In the distant future, a planet called Sugarzoom resides as one of the few planets living in peace. Sugarzoom, eh? Are the people on that planet hyped up on sugar or something?
I don't think so, to be honest. I guess it's a random name that the creators of the show came up with for the city.
One day, a boy named Chiro wanders into an unexplored region of the city and discovers an abandoned super robot.
He wanders inside and pulls a switch that awakens the robot monkeys that rest inside, along with gaining the power of primate that gives him some unique powers. So he is declared as the leader of the Super Robot Monkey Team, protecting the planet from the evil forces of the Skeleton King and many other threats.
For the main cast, we have Chiro, a young teenage boy who becomes the leader of the Hyperforce. He is a bit cocky and full of himself sometimes, but as the series moved on, the character matured as well. He wields the power primate, which can give him incredible strength. He also pilots the torso tank driver of the Super Robot, and he is voiced by Greg Keeps, the same guy who does Beast Boy from the Teen Titans animated series.
Sparks, also known as SPRX77, is the comedian of the group, taking it upon himself to lighten up the mood with wisecrack jokes, even if it's not necessarily appropriate. He pilots the right fist rocket and is easily the best pilot on the team. He wields two magnets that can move various magnetic objects, as well as create balls of magnetic energy. He's voiced by Corey Feldman, who is known during the 1980s with the roles in two of the Hollywood films, The Goonies and Gremlins.
Mr. Hal Gibson, or just Gibson, is the more scientific member of the team, while wielding his drills that can dig underground or shoot some energy from them. He pilots the left fist rocket of the Super Robot, and he's voiced by Tom Kenny, mainly known for his many roles in voicing, such as the voice of SpongeBob.
Nova is the only female member of the Hyperforce, until Janae joined them later on. She's the best hand-to-hand fighter on the team, and she pilots the Right Foot Crusher Cruiser. Her main weapons are her robo-fists, and with them, she could easily crush her foes. She has feelings for Sparks, but she kept it a secret until the last episode of the series. She has a short temper, and she has a tomboy personality. She is voiced by Kari Walgren, who also did the voice of Susie Johnson from Phineas and Ferb in... Wait a second. She also voiced as Rain Sage from Tales of Symphonia? Yes! Moving on?
Otto is the engineer monkey of the team. He's a bit dim-witted, but he's still funny, and his ability is his energy saw, slicing and dicing enemies. He controls the Right Foot Crusher Cruiser of the Super Robot, and he is voiced by Clancy Brown, known for voicing Dr. Cortex in most of the Crash Bandicoot games, and the voice of Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob. Which is no surprise, because every time I hear Otto, he sounds exactly like Mr. Krabs.
Antari is second in command of the Hyperforce, and is the wisest member of the group. He pilots the Super Robot's head, known as the Brain Scrambler 2. His main weapons are his Ghost Claws, and he was voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, who also did the voice of Captain Gantu from Lilo and Stitch. Since Antari is wise, the team tends to look up to him, and even sometimes goes to him for advice.
The Super Robot itself is a giant robot equipped with powers and abilities, and sometimes has a will of its own. It can divide into 6 vehicles, all driven by a member of the team. And we also have Jimney, a girl who can transform into a giant robot since she is a robot. She is voiced by Ashley Johnson, and she is Chiro's love interest in the series, which is odd seeing a human boy going out with a robot. It's almost as weird as seeing a chipmunk going out with a cyborg.
Duh, but I think it's cute. Janae is also cute. If there's a plush doll of her, I would buy it and take it home with me!
And I will say that the actors Greg Keeps and Ashley Johnson have always been with roles with love interests. Not sure if it's a coincidence or if they really like each other in real life. As for Sugazoom, the citizens have their own personalities, like a man who works at a Hoverburger restaurant, an old man who talks about the end of the world coming.
And then we have the guy who always carries around a stuffed penguin named Mr. Cheapers.
I'll bet Ari would love to carry around my giant shadow plushie anywhere.
I hate
you. Anyway, now let's move on to the villains of the show. There are too many villains to count, so we'll only mention a few. The first being the Skeleton King. He's an evil undead creature who plans on conquering Sugazoom and destroying the Hyperforce while sending his minions of formless or other creatures to do his bidding. It's likely they decide to turn the Horn King into an anime character. He is voiced by Mark Hamill, mainly recognized as the actor who plays Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy. So, it seemed like he did succumb to the dark side after all. But either way, Skeleton King is badass. Assisting him is the TV monster. He is Skeleton King's second body, who leads his army while seeing what's going on throughout the built in the TV monitor. Kinda reminds me of Iborg from Twice Upon a Time. Later on in the series, the character would be given a whole new upgrade, now called the Skeleton King Droid, and continues to be a threat to the Hyperforce.
Mandarin is the sixth monkey who used to be the leader of the monkey team, and he is orange, which explains Chiro's outfit. He was voiced by James Hong, who did the voice for Professor Chang from Teen Titans. He wanted to not only protect Sugazoom, but to rule it as well. His teammates, however, did not like this idea and banished him to an off-world prison called the Hostile Outlaw Observation Prison as a result. He remained asleep there until Skeleton King woke him up.
There's Valina, a skull sorceress who wields the power of dark magic with nightmarish ghouls and zombies by her side. She mainly becomes the main villainess in Season 4, as she begins her mission in resurrecting the Skeleton King. And finally, there's Lord Scrapperton, Grand Earl of the Mecha Realm. He was a man who was obsessed with machines, metal, and all that sort of stuff, and soon became a machine himself. He's a collector of gears, springs, and so on, and having a fetish of saying TikTok almost every time he ends a sentence, or in the middle of a sentence. He's pretty cool, especially when he's voiced by the mighty Python veteran Eric Idle.
The show mainly had the Hyperforce protect Sugazoom from the Skeleton King. Later on, they would explore other galaxies in space for more adventures.
The show had some interesting references here and there, but most people knew the show as similar to the Power Rangers, mainly with the robot monkeys and the super robot.
I can understand that, mainly because it's a pretty well-known gimmick that the Power Rangers have. The monkey team's robotic suits have the similar style as the Rangers' uniforms, and the super robot also can separate into smaller robotic vehicles just like the other giant robots in the Power Ranger series. So I don't blame them for that comparison.
Yeah, I never was into Power Rangers. It just seemed like some boring show with boring characters who wear spacesuits doing a bunch of ballet routines and having a giant robot at the end. Then the series went on with more series and I completely lost track and didn't bother with it. But as for Super Robot Monkey Team, they had their own list of episodes. One episode had them explore a world full of giants. One episode had them battling an army of fake Cheeros. One episode has them meeting a strange alien called the Wigglenog.
The only episode I could remember watching, without cheating of course, had to be the very first episode of the series in Season 1, when Chiro first meets Jimne. I don't know, that episode? Besides the certain ones we would cover later, is the only one that sticks out to me. Maybe it's because that I find Jimne a very cute character when I first got introduced to her. Seriously, why am I a sucker for cute things?
You cannot deny the cuteness!
Moving on.
We also get a backstory about the monkeys. They are cared for by a mysterious but friendly alchemist who wanted to fuse magic and technology into the perfect fighting machine for good. But after a terrible incident, the alchemist was injected by dark energy and rushed to complete the cybernetic bodies for the monkeys. He then sent them away to protect the people from him, as he would later become the Skeleton King.
When I was first introduced to the backstory, I actually felt bad for who the Skeleton King used to be. It's almost as bad as Naomi getting possessed by the Darkening and killing her best friend, Psycho, in course part. Oh shit. The people who are playing the game are not supposed to know that yet. Oh well. Anyways! Just imagine what he had gone through before becoming that horrible monster. The Alchemist must have suffered a lot. Seriously though, I really love that game.
The show's style really gave you that anime feel while having characters with their own personalities and their actions. The series had a very good running with its growing fans. Each season finale was really epic and had you at the edge of your seat, like the final confrontation with the Skeleton King in Season 1, or the season finale that got everybody choked up at the end was the death of Antari in Season 2.
Why do you have to die?
It was quite intense. The death of a character a lot of people enjoyed was pretty dark, but then at the beginning of Season 3, Antari was given a new body with a few new abilities.
Yes! Yes! Antari's back! Yay! I'm so happy! Sorry, my fangirlish side got the better of me.
Right. Anyway, the series started off a bit slow, but it gets real good later on. As the series progressed near the end of Season 4, the Skeleton King is resurrected with a new body, new fortress, and new minions. What plans does he have for the Hyperforce? Can they stop his reign of evil once again? Will there be a Season 5? What's gonna happen next?
Yeah, don't you just love it when shows end with a cliffhanger?
It's like what happens to almost every Sonic TV show. They always end with a cliffhanger. And so, for 4 seasons and 52 episodes total, Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go was cancelled on December 16th, 2006, and it was never seen again.
But that wasn't the end of the legacy it left behind.
Indeed. It spawned quite a lot of merchandising from the show with action figures, playsets, and other goodies. Of course, nowadays, trying to find them on eBay is a real challenge. And of course, the fans still have some fond memories of the show, although it's a bit of a shame that it never got a DVD release.
Hold on a sec, Hatter. According to my friend Thanks the First P, he found some information about the series being released on DVD one time and then stopped selling them altogether for unknown reasons. Sorry, fellow Super Robot Monkey Team fans, but if you want to find any of the episodes from the series, look for them on YouTube.
Well, if that is true, they should at least re-release them onto a DVD or Blu-ray with a box set that has all the episodes. I know there are still a lot of Super Robot Monkey Team fans out there, just like how there's still a lot of Commander Keen fans out there. So, what's your conclusion on the show, Ari?
I honestly love the show. I always looked forward to watching the episodes on Jetix every day, just like I've done with other shows like Digimon and Puka. It's a blast watching the show, and I always love seeing my favorite character, Sparks and Antari, in action. If I had the DVD box set of the show, I would watch it every day. But oh well, at least I can still watch all the episodes on YouTube.
Well, for me, the show was pretty good. Sure, it has some similarities to Power Rangers, but that didn't stop me from enjoying it. I have quite a lot of memories of the show from watching it off of Jetix when the broadcasting network used to be around. Of course, I was real pleased with seeing them again when I found them on YouTube or VBox7.com. My favorite monkeys were Antari and Otto. Antari is like the wise Yoda of the group, while Otto is more of the funny goofball with his experience with building machines. And you gotta love that catchy little theme song.
That theme song is really cool to listen to. But if you try to sing it, you have to sing certain parts of the song pretty fast, and believe me, some parts of the lyrics are a major tongue twister.
Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. A cool show with its characters and design, and it deserves to get a DVD box set release. Well, this was sure fun going down memory lane for the both of us.
It definitely was fun. I just wish that the series wasn't cancelled. Oh well, I'm sure the creators had good reasons for canceling it.
Well, that wraps up on this long-awaited Co-op Forgotten Media episode. Tune in next time where I'll be taking a look at one of my most requested subjects for this show.
As for me, I really need to get my schedule all straightened out and get the 2 videos I'm working on done. So without further ado, this is Gianna1.
And Melting Man 234, signing off. Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff you may or may not have heard of. You know, I always wonder what happens when I get a lot of requests on a subject for Forgotten Media. Makes me wonder if it really is forgotten, if a lot of people keep asking me to do it. Well, I guess I'll find out when I get to cover on one of my most requested subjects known as Whatever Happened to Robot Jones. This was an American television series that was created by Greg Miller and was shown on Cartoon Network on August 25th, 2000 as a pilot episode being featured on the Voice Your Choice Marathon, and it ended up on second place. Then eventually it began its series run on June 25th, 2002. It's one of those shows I remembered watching back in the old days of Cartoon Network next to Sheep in the Big City and Evil Con Carne. The story is mainly about a teenage robot named Robot Jones, who attends Polynew Middle School in this strange 1980s setting to examine data on the human life. Attending a school full of humans is pretty difficult for a robot, as he is more intelligent with his mind and cybernetics, but everybody treats him like a freak because, robots are evil, brah! Even though Robot Jones is the outcast of the school, he still manages to make some friends and make some enemies along the way. The origin of the show was originally going to be a pirate show, but back in the day, Cartoon Network had some kind of law for no pirate shows because, pirates are evil, brah! So Greg tinkered around with some ideas for a while, which led him into creating Robot Jones. For the cast of the series, we have Robot Jones, a robot who begins his daily mission to experiment on the human life. He is an intelligent mech who tries to fit in with the human population, but he still has a few kinks in his system here and there, as his mom unit calls him a prototype. But one thing's for sure, is that if you piss him off, he really goes berserk. His voice is quite interesting, as most people say that he is voiced by a Macintosh Jr., a computer speaking tool used for some of the old Macintosh models, and some of them still exist with today's models. But according to Greg Miller, the voice of Robot Jones was actually voiced by an old Word 98 program, which also has a computer speaking tool. His parents, called Mom Unit and Dad Unit, are his robotic parents that usually inform him on his missions on studying human life. Mom Unit is more of the energy tank, as she literally has gas pumps for hands, while Dad Unit is more of the motorized robot who constantly keeps saying things 3 times. Now the interesting thing about Dad Unit is that he is voiced by a Macintosh Ralph. These kind of robotic voices have been used in other medias, but as for Ralph in the current years, he's probably more recognizable as the voice of Otto in Disney and Pixar's WALL-E. Timothy Morton, the tall kid in the school nicknamed Socks, 'cause I guess he has long socks or something. Charles Cubinacle, or whatever you pronounce that weird name, the video game nerd nicknamed Cubie for one of his special talents in an episode, and Mitch Freeman Davis, the laid-back character who always goes around wearing headphones and somehow manages to see perfectly with all of that hair in his face. There's Shannon Westenberg, some girl who suffers from orthodontic overkill, and Robot Jones has a crush on her because of her metallic parts, even when she can be a bit of a jerk at times. There's the Augment twins, Lenny and Denny, the evil dweebs who live in the air ducts of the school, and constantly plan on taking Jones' superintelligence, or planning to overtake the school. It's pretty odd that their lair is within the air ducts in the school. Makes me wonder how do they survive from being sliced to pieces by the fans inside and such. The school also has some characters like Mr. Mick, the math teacher with a very strange name, and Principal Madman, known for his cruelty and hatred to robots, and his strict attitude by giving students detention for a ridiculously long period of time. This character is very weird. It's like if Adolf Hitler decided to gain 10 pounds of fat and become a principal. But if you look past the weird design, he's a fun character for his strict personality. The episodes usually had Robot Jones examine the life of school and human activities, and conclude them in his datalog entry files at the end of each episode. One episode has him observing PE class, one episode has him learning about growth spurts, and another episode has him learning about competition with the Wonder Cube, a parody of the Rubik's Cube. The art style is very similar to Schoolhouse Rock for its odd style, and it happens to be the last show on Cartoon Network to use the traditional cell animation process. The animation was done by Rough Draft Studios, known for making various films and animated series over the years. The music is a nice clash between rock music and 8-bit music, giving it interesting nostalgia. Most of the gags and humor in the show were more intended for older audiences, especially when the gym teacher is portrayed as a gay stereotype. The setting in the show is like going back to the 1980s, like how the episode Cube Wars is more of a spoof of the Rubik's Cube's popularity. There are some pretty weird stuff in the show, like how in one episode is a music video about a naked guy and a dog running around the world, or how a kid gets attacked by birds and then gets dragged off to who knows where. You don't see that every day. I find this series very similar to Sheep in the Big City, obscure cartoons on Cartoon Network that had gags that older audiences would enjoy and laugh at, while younger audiences would have no idea what they're saying. I think the one reason that some people complained about Robot Jones was his new voice in Season 2. Some people might think that the company Macintosh sued Cartoon Network for using the Macintosh programs, back when people thought Jones was voiced by a Macintosh, but it turns out the real reason behind the voice change was that the executives were freaked out on how weird Robot Jones sounded in Season 1, so they sent Greg to find a new voice for the character in Season 2 that sounded more quote-unquote Hollywood. So they found a random kid by the name of Bobby Block, and he became the new voice for Robot Jones. But then some reason they went back and re-aired Season 1 with all the episodes redubbed with the new voice. I liked his robot voice, cause it was something different that I never heard of before back then, and he was actually voiced by a robot. But now he was voiced by a kid who's been given a robotic tone to his voice. The series was short-lived as it lasted for over a year. I guess it just wasn't taking any notice, or that it was too good to last, and there were even some canceled episodes that were in the works. One episode talked about the history of robotics, probably giving Robot Jones some backstory on how he was made. One episode would have Jones on a talk show, and the third one remains a mystery. With only 13 episodes and 2 seasons total, Robot Jones was cancelled on November 14th, 2003, and was never seen again. Over the years, I guess the show sparked a bit of a cult following, because I've seen a lot of fan art of this guy, and probably one of the reasons why I get a lot of requests on it for Forgotten Media. Robot Jones would make very few cameos after this, like making a cameo in an episode of Dexter's Laboratory, even though you can barely see him because he's blended into the background. And during Cartoon Network's 20th anniversary specials, Robot Jones makes a cameo appearance along with a lot of other Cartoon Network shows over the years. It's time for an update, because while I'm in the process of re-editing this episode, I might as well talk about Robot Jones's other cameo appearance that happened years later. So, in the year 2018, the show OKKO featured an episode called Crossover Nexus. It was mostly an episode focusing on a crossover between characters from OKKO, Steven Universe, Ben 10, and Teen Titans Go. But the fun thing about this episode is that it features tons and tons of cameos of characters from other Cartoon Network shows over the years. From the more famous ones like Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, and Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, to the more obscure ones like Sheep in the Big City, Moxie Show, and obviously Robot Jones. Surprisingly, he actually has some bit of dialogue in this episode, and wouldn't you know it, he's voiced by that old program that they used in the original episodes of Robot Jones. Yeah, and not just some random kid with a voice filter. I did watch the episode while I was re-editing this episode, and it was nice. I was mostly geeking out at some of the more obscure references they threw in. But even to this day, it's still sad that Robot Jones still hasn't gotten any kind of official home media or digital release, so good luck in trying to find any episodes on the internet, let alone finding episodes with the original voice of Robot Jones. But it still leaves us the unanswered question, whatever happened to Robot Jones? Well, I'll tell you what happened. He ended up in the Rejected World, a place full of characters who were forgotten and scrapped and never heard of again. Well, at least that's my theory anyway. Or maybe he's in an alternate universe in the 1990s, gathering robot troops in the war against the humans. Well, I think that's probably something Greg Miller would say. Well, your guess is as good as mine as to whatever happened to this little guy. But either way, Robot Jones is a nostalgic TV show back in the old days of Cartoon Network. Its characters and settings are what makes it unique. In closing, whatever happened to Robot Jones is an underrated show that deserves to have all the episodes ported onto a DVD box set, restored and uncut. or at least have an option to watch the episodes with Robot Jones's original voice or redubbed voice. Well, that wraps up another episode of Forgotten Media. Tune in next time where I'll be doing another installment of Mixed Batch. So until then, this is Melting Man 234 signing out.
They did the mash,
They did the Monster
the
Man.
monster mash,
It was a graveyard
they
smash.
did the mash.
Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff beyond the grave. Anyway, this year's Halloween we'll be looking at a very odd Monster Mania film called Monster Mash. An animated film made by Deke Entertainment, and was released on August 29th, 2000. Right from the title of the film, you'd be thinking, how can they make a movie based off of the song? Well, here's how it goes. It focuses on three of the famous monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman, who are nicknamed Drac, Frank, and Wolf in this film. They were once the scariest bunch of monsters in the old days, but as the years went by, they started to lose their charm, and ended up as entertainers for television. Pretty weird alternative, but hey, even monsters have to make a living somehow. One day they are summoned to the Superior Court of Horrors for their lack of horror activity. So in order to prove that they are still scary as they were before, the trio is given 24 hours to scare an everyday family known as the Tinklemeisters. Otherwise they'll be sentenced to entertain children's parties for eternity. The trio of monsters are what you would expect. Drac is the casual vampire who acts as the leader of the group, coming up with schemes to scare the Tinklemeisters. Frank is the lumbering monster lackey, doing most of the work and occasionally having his limbs fall off of his body. And Wolf is the mangy beast who acts as the funny man of the group, trying to be all cool with the group. They all live in Transylvania, living in the same dark castle. Wonder if they were making a reference to the monster serials. There's also a skeleton dog named Yorick who acts as a narrator to the film. He's kinda cool. The Tinklemeisters are described as a typical family living in the suburbs, and are anything but normal. Mr. Tinklemeister is a dog groomer, hence why he drives around a weird-looking clown car. Mrs. Tinklemeister is a neat freak, always dusting, vacuuming, cleaning, and so on. Stella, who is, well, she's just there. And Spike, a kid who can only whistle. Supposedly, while at a young age, Spike got struck by lightning, and after that, all he can do is whistle while enjoying his hobbies with science and reading monster stories. Think of this kid as Gerald McBoing if he decided to join the science community. And finally, there are the three monsters that act as the villains in this film, that try to stop Drac, Frank, and Wolf in succeeding to scare the Tinklemeisters. They are described as the up-to-date monsters, and are parodies of other monsters like Freddy D. Spaghetti, a combination of Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Mutant Spaghetti. Most of the film takes place in the monster's castle, where the Tinklemeisters end up living in after winning in a fake contest planned by Drac, and since it's Transylvania, it's what you would expect. You got bats, you've got skeletons, you've got gargoyles, you got angry villagers, and so on. And yes, it does feature the Monster Mash tune in the beginning and ending of the film.
He did the Monster Man. It was a graveyard smash.
But in some other countries, they replaced the song with a different tune.
A monster from the grave.
Not sure what the deal with that is. I guess they had some kind of copyright issue, or maybe it's just how they translate the song and whatnot into other countries. There are also some other songs in the film, like Waiting for Spike, a song sung by the Tinklemeisters waiting for the day for Spike to say something, and my favorite, When We Were Bad, where Drac, Frank, and Wolf sing about the glory days when they were scary. The film does have some strange moments here and there, such as the scene when the judge of the Superior Court of Horrors comes in through the fireplace. At first I thought it was going to be like a devil, like Satan himself, but instead it's a skeleton basketball playing judge character. I really didn't see that coming. My one complaint about the film was that it tends to reuse animation a lot, mostly in moments that last half a second or just because they're too lazy to think of anything else. There also seems to be a problem with the lip syncing at times. Sometimes what they're saying doesn't fit to their mouth movements, and other times they're saying something yet nothing comes out. But anyway, Monster Mash is decent. It's a fun kids film and it pays tribute to some of the classic horror icons, like having segments in black and white and such. The film has been ported onto VHS and DVD, and later seen in a Monster Fun Pack that was released on September 7, 2004 with other films, like Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein and the Wolfman, and Archie's Weird Mysteries. It's interesting to note that on the VHS version of Monster Mash, it contains a bonus music video using clips from the film, and even clips from the Universal Monster films with the original Monster Mash theme playing. It's a nice treat for old school monster fans, although I have no idea why this isn't available on the DVD version. So if you're looking for something to spark your nostalgia, or if you just want to watch something different this Halloween, then I say give Monster Mash a watch. It's frightfully funny.
Boo!
Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. So this is Melting Man 234 signing out.
Everything was good, and we were bad. Terrific times when we could drown that. After Lyrum scream, we make quite a team. Tearing up the town like no one ever had. Our livelihood, it was so good. When we were bad, everything was good. Back when we were bad. No, we was the time. And the team that we had. We could make them scream.
Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff beyond the grave. Mwahahaha. Anyway, seeing how Halloween is just around the corner, this year we'll be taking a look at one of the most frightening and violent video games, simply known as CarnEvil, a two-player on-rail shooter that was released for the arcades on Halloween of 1998. This arcade shooter was made by Midway Games. Yeah, back in the day when Midway used to be in business. The story is about the legend of Ludwig von Tokentaker, an insane ringmaster that created his Carnival of Souls, or CarnEvil for short. After a severe accident, the circus and all of the employees were burned to the ground, and Tokentaker was sentenced to death. Not long after that, a mysterious tombstone of Tokentaker appears in Green Valley, Iowa, where his circus of horrors once stood. Thus began the tale that anyone who inserts a token into the tombstone slot inside of a jester's mouth, then CarnEvil would rise again. Years later, two kids named Jacob and Lisa are on a tractor ride called Spooky Sam's Ghost Tour, when they hop off to see the tombstone of Tokentaker, where a token rests near it. So they feed it to the jester's mouth, thus unleashing hell onto the world. Armed with shotguns taken straight from the carnival's shooting gallery, the two kids make their way through the insane festival and must defeat Tokentaker before dawn, otherwise the carnival will disappear along with them. The game features 4 levels: a haunted house full of zombies, spiders, and bats, Rickety Town, a compilation of attraction rides, the Freak Show, where, as the name states, contains some of the freakiest creatures of the carnival, and if you have enough quarters to make it past all 3 levels, then you make your way to the big top and your final battle with Tokentaker. At the start of each level, a floating jester head named Umlaut would give out a cryptic poem of what to expect in the carnival. His scenes are pretty entertaining if you're into those kind of characters.
Welcome to the haunted house. Meet a ghoul who lost her head. If you'd like to stay and join us, you're always welcome, alive or dead.
This light gun game has you going around shooting enemies while navigating through the park's attractions. Occasionally, you have to reload your gun when you're out of ammo by either cocking it or shooting it off screen. There are some moments in the game when the camera turns, only to have you take a hit from an enemy, so you gotta be quick on your feet so that you don't waste so many quarters in this arcade. Besides having health packs to increase your health, there are a variety of weapons you can use to your advantage, like a shotgun, a flamethrower, a machine gun, an item to increase the number of bullets you hold, and a gun that shoots out acid. The enemies in this game are probably some of the strangest and macabre creatures I've seen. Besides the casual zombies and bats, you've got demented elves with sharp candy canes, enemies called flapjack, which are two bodies glued together, killer clowns, mimes that really don't do anything, spider monkeys, yeah, literally spider monkeys, and some more enemies that are more freakier than the next. And occasionally there will be this random girl named Betty running around helplessly. Besides, it can't be a first-person arcade shooter game without the don't shoot the civilians deal. There's also an interesting handful of bosses. Sure, you have Hambone, a mini-boss like a spoof of Jason Voorhees, but then you have some of the main bosses like Eve of Marie, the Victorian girl out for blood, Krampus, the anti-Santa Claus, and Junior, the giant mutant baby. This game is known for its blood and gore. Even for an arcade game made in 1998, this game had the balls to go this far with the violence. There are also some interesting Easter eggs that some of you might not know about this game. When you choose the haunted house, cock the gun 5 times before the level begins. If done correctly, the zombies will be wearing random hats throughout the level. Yeah, weird, isn't it? Makes you think they were predicting the zombie apocalypse of Team Fortress 2. There are some interesting cameos of characters from an arcade game called Trog. It features the caveman from the game frozen in ice in the Freak Show, and even some of the dinosaurs from the game act as enemies in Rickety Town. There was also an alternate version of the opening to Rickety Town, which went something like this. You'll lose all worries, you'll lose all care. In Rickety Town, I have a hunch. You'll lose your voice from too much screaming. I bet you'll even lose your lunch. There, I just heard my failed attempt of impersonating Umlaut. And our final Easter egg is in Freak Show. Arcade owners had the option of altering the boss's appearance. By typing in a code, the boss in that stage would feature a giant teddy bear called Deddy. I guess they thought that seeing people shooting giant mutant babies was too violent, so sometimes depending on the arcade you were at, they would censor it with the giant teddy bear. This game was quite popular back then. So popular that a guy by the name of Jet Matza holds the world record of the game's high score, with 2,083,180 points. I'm surprised it didn't start any fan-made ghost stories about the arcade machine being haunted or something. After all, it was released on Halloween. Maybe that'll give Creepypasta some ideas for a story about the horrors of CarnEvil. After a couple of years, the arcade machine just vanished from arcades and was never seen again. Which is a shame because it was never ported onto any home consoles. I've heard rumors that they had planned to port it onto the PlayStation consoles, but it never happened. Nowadays, the arcade machines have been replaced with other kinds of arcade games these days. Some of them have been put on auction on eBay, and if you're planning to get one, you best save up your money, because these things ain't cheap. Or there's always the option of playing the game through the use of an emulator. In closing, CarnEvil is a horrifically delightful arcade shooter that should at least get an HD remake, or heck, even get a sequel. Or maybe here's an interesting idea, do an HD remake and release it on Steam. Yeah, that'd be something. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. So this is Melting Man 234 signing out.
Come on and ride, Big Bunyan ride, no place to hide. Big Bunyan ride, come on inside. Big Bunyan ride, we'll ride and ride. Into the night you will scream and cry, and then you'll die, and you'll die, then you'll die, then you'll die. Come on and ride, Big Bunyan ride, no place to hide.
Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff you may or may not have heard of. And welcome to another installment of Mixed Batch. This is a segment where I talk about medias that seem too short for one episode, and so I decided to squeeze them all into one. So let's get started. First up is Star Fox 2, a video game that was going to be a sequel to Star Fox, and it was being developed by Nintendo for the Super NES on February 16th, 1993. Andros is back and is planning to get revenge against the Star Fox team, and it's up to Fox McCloud and his team of old and new members to stop his reign of terror once again. The game was displayed at the Winter CES in Las Vegas and was a very popular product, so popular that a guy by the name of Sean J. Freeman got arrested for trying to steal the game's prototype that was being displayed. Yeah, things were pretty crazy back in the 1990s. The first game used an FX chip to display its polygon graphics on an on-rail shooter, while the sequel will unveil the Super FX chip, or FX2 chip, that made the sequel have a free roaming environment with some multiplayer action. An example of the free roaming was that your air wing would transform into a walker and wander around the place. The game would also feature some new pilots, Miyu and Faye, making them the first female pilots of the Star Fox team. There's also a sheep character, but I have no idea who it is because I can't find anything about this mysterious character. And there's also another Fox character that looks like Fox McCloud, so I guess it's its cousin, relative, twin brother, doppelganger, I don't know. So a lot of people got real excited for it. People were talking about it, advertisements were shown, and it had a very promising outcome. Unfortunately, the game was cancelled and never saw the light of day, even though the game was already finished in Japan. The reason behind this was for two reasons. Mario's creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, wanted to take a break from making games with the FX chip, and the main reason for its cancellation was the Nintendo 64, which was called the Ultra 64 back in the day. The company wanted to focus on the Nintendo 64 and experiment with the game's engine, and not having to delay it several times like they've already done. It's a shame that this game never got released. It's amazing on how far they could go with the technology as they push the limits of the Super NES's hardware. There have been some fan-made ROMs and emulations on the internet where you're able to play the game's alpha and beta stages, and there's even a bootleg of the game floating around somewhere. But anyway, I'm sure it wouldn't have hurt the company if they actually released the game back then. Heck, it would have been a nice closing to the Super NES. So there you go, Star Fox 2, a game that was too good to be true. Dot Comedy is a strange sitcom that aired on ABC at 8:30 p.m. on December 8th, 2000, and also aired on Channel 4 over in the UK. The show was hosted by Annabelle Gurich and Randy and Jason Sklar, or the Sklar brothers as they will be known as later on. Over in the UK it was hosted by Chris Addison and Gail Porter. The series had a contract to do 13 episodes. 5 of them were made, but only 1 got aired on television. The goal of the show was to show random videos and websites on the internet to keep the audience entertained, and that's pretty much it. There's really nothing much to say about it, just a TV show that tries to keep the audience entertained with random stuff on the internet. And this was back in 2000, back in the day when there was no YouTube, not that many popular internet memes, or any other popular websites that would have worked. Trying to research this thing was a real challenge, because I kept finding all these articles with the name .comedy in it as a separate word or as one word, but they have nothing to do with the TV series in 2000. I can only find small bits and pieces floating around on YouTube that featured short segments from the only episode that they aired. One clip has them go to an air sickness bag museum, and another clip has them go into some kind of convention to show off some cybernetic products, like the Cyberfresh, a device that is both a mouse and a deodorant stick, the Backspace 2, a working keyboard that also works as a back massager, and the CompuView 2001, some kind of handheld device that's a scanner, an early prototype of Skype? No, it's just a review mirror slapped onto a computer monitor. That way you can see your boss coming before he sees you slacking off. I guess in 2000 those items looked cool, but nowadays they're just stupid and make you look ridiculous, like using the Backspace 2 as a back and butt massager. Makes me wonder what the Backspace 1 was like. This is a TV show that didn't work and was too early to jump into that kind of stuff with the internet. If they had made the series in 2008 or 2010, then it might have lasted longer. Or maybe it wouldn't make much of a difference because we can just easily get on the web whenever we feel like it and find this stuff for ourselves. So there you have it. .comedy. Might as well be ... it sucks, or an endless line of dots to show how speechless you are in finding out about this short-lived show. Yeah, Seeing all those dots on that screen makes me feel like getting some Dippin' Dots. Haven't had that stuff in a long time. On to the last topic. Okay, this is a character named Shorty, known for being, well, short. He was created back in the days when famous studios started making Popeye cartoons after the Max Fleischer days were over. They started off with cartoons during the times of World War II that had Popeye in the Navy, or going up against a bunch of Japanese people, which were called Japs back in war times. And the ones with Shorty in it were made a few years before the war ended. There were only 3 cartoons that featured him. The first one, Happy Birthdays, which was released on July 16, 1943, Popeye invites Shorty to his birthday since Shorty's been depressed with not having that many friends. This leads to Shorty wanting to help out with his birthday, while Popeye regrets inviting him. The second one, The Merry-Go-Round, which was released on December 31st, 1943, Shorty tries to help Popeye get the nerve to propose to Olive. This was the second Popeye short to be shown in color, and the last time the actress, Marjorie Hines, would voice Olive Oyl. Now the one thing about Olive in this short is that she's a real jerk to Popeye and she doesn't even know that he's trying to propose to her. Well, I guess I'd be a bit stressed out too if I was living in a boarding house. The last one, Moving Away, which was released on September 22nd, 1944, Popeye and Shorty help Olive move her furniture out while getting in trouble with a local policeman. These cartoons usually had Shorty be Popeye's friend, who tries to help out his pal, only to lead Popeye into trouble. A lot of trouble. There's nothing appealing about Shorty.
Gee, can I help? I like moving furniture even better than moving pictures.
He's just an annoying little nuisance, constantly pestering the guy. I was just waiting for that moment where Popeye eats his spinach and beats the crap out of him. But no, there's no spinach action in these shorts. It's just Popeye and Shorty getting into a jam, mainly caused by Shorty, while Popeye just wants to strangle the guy. I guess they were trying to come up with something new for Popeye by giving him a sailor buddy and making them more of a 2-man group, but it looks like it didn't work out that well. Heck, Popeye was better off with having Sweepy or even Eugene the Magical Jeep as a companion. So far, there's only been one Popeye and Shorty cartoon that has been released on the DVD, but you can easily find all 3 Popeye and Shorty cartoons on YouTube. So, there you have it. Shorty might as well be the most unlikable character in the Popeye universe. And why is it that we no longer see him in any other Popeye media after being in only 3 cartoon shorts? Well, I think the ending to Happy Birthdays pretty much sums it up.
Hey, can I blow out the candle? Happy birthday to my pal, to my pal, to my pal, happy birthday.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. I've got a couple of Christmas specials coming up, and I've actually managed to do 2 of them this year. So until then, this is Melting Man 234 signing out. Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff stranded on the island of Forgotten Christmas specials, right next to the island of Misfit Toys. A Christmas Carol, a timeless tale about an old man who hates Christmas, but the spirits of time soon help change his mind on what Christmas really is. Since Charles Dickens created the novel, there has been many film adaptations over the years. Whether they be wonderful or crappy, they still follow the story well. There have been many parodies and references in many different medias, and practically everyone has thrown in their version of A Christmas Carol. The Muppets did it, Looney Tunes did it, the Smurfs did it, Disney has done it at least 3 times. Heck, even I did my version of the tale in my old Action Mario and Luigi plush series.
This is your Christmas future. Ebenezer Scrooge? Oops, wrong future.
Despite how there are so many film adaptations of A Christmas Carol that most people know about, and they always have to show most of them on TV every year in December, I went digging around to find some of the more lesser-known film adaptations that would work on Forgotten Media, and I've managed to find a few. So it's time to follow the path of the ghost of Christmas past, to discover some old films that are over 100 years old. First up is Scrooge, or Marley's Ghost, a British silent film directed by Walter R. Booth and was released on November of 1901. This film is known as the first film adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and it dates way back to the early 1900s, back in the old days of silent black and white movies. The film centers on Scrooge, the old miserly man who doesn't give a damn about Christmas, until he is visited by the ghost of his former partner, Jacob Marley, who helps redeem Scrooge from sharing the same fate as he had. During the years of silent films, they were silent when the finished film came out, obviously. Most theaters would usually have an orchestra or a guy playing an organ to fill in for the music. There's also not that many title cards to display what the characters are saying in this film, so you really have to use your imagination when the characters start moving their mouths to show that they're talking. One of the things that is different from the novel is that Scrooge doesn't meet the three spirits that show him the past, present, and future of Christmas. Instead, Marley does all three parts, hence why the alternate title is called Marley's Ghost. For a film made in 1901, you can see the film hasn't aged that well over the years. Most of the sets look like backdrops, and the entire film looks like it was filmed on a theater stage. The special effects aren't anything special with today's standards, but back then they were fascinating, seeing Marley's head on the door, or showing Scrooge his past with the use of a black curtain for a background. The costuming for its time are okay, with the exception of Marley's ghost, which is pretty lazy. It's just some guy with a white sheet thrown over him. But this film has a special moment, as it was shown at the Sandringham House on December of 1901, as part of a royal command performance by King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra. Yeah, this film was requested by some people in high society to be shown at a big fancy building. So for people that were rich and royal, or managed to get lucky to go inside the building, you pretty much got the best seats in the house. The length of the film is a bit confusing. From what I've dug up, most resources say that the film is either 10 minutes or 6 minutes long, and it all depends on if the film is sped up or not. There are some scenes missing, such as Scrooge viewing the death of Tiny Tim, but at least I can confirm that it's not the length of a feature-length film, because those type of films didn't exist back in the early 1900s. As far as I know, there is no home video release for this film, unless people managed to keep the original film reels that had the film. But other than that, there's always YouTube. So that's Scrooge or Marley's Ghost, an interesting attempt to make a film based off the novel, and it's amazing that this much film footage has managed to survive over the years. About a few years later, there were more early film adaptations of the story, and they actually had the name A Christmas Carol in the title. One was made in 1908, and the other one made in 1910, the same year the first film adaptation of Frankenstein was released. I was going to feature both films in this episode, but things got a bit confusing. I was able to do a decent amount of research on the 1910 version. As for the 1908 version, not so much. Most resources that talk about the film don't have much to say, or confuse the film to be the 1910 version. All I can find for concrete evidence of the 1908 film is that it was made by a company called SNA Studios, and a man by the name of Tom Ricketts played the role of Scrooge. So who knows if this film still exists, or if it's been declared as a lost film. It might as well share the same fate as The Right to Be Happy, a full-length film adaptation of A Christmas Carol made in 1916, that is also considered to be a lost film. So with that out of the way, let's focus on the 1910 version that was made by the Edison Studios. Scrooge is an asshole, he gets haunted by ghosts, and he later sees the error of his ways. Same basic story. One of the interesting things about this adaptation is when Scrooge's nephew visits him. In most versions, it's just himself, but in this one, it's himself and his friends that visit him. Haven't really seen anything like that before. Marley is better designed this time, although he wears a chain around his waist instead of being covered in chains. And I'll tell you, it's a lot better than the 1901 version. The ghosts that visit Scrooge are actually in this version, and they're all played by the same actor. The acting is more fine-tuned in this version, where the actors become the characters in the film, with some quirky moments here and there. Like near the end of the film, when Scrooge offers Bob Cratchit to raise his salary, Bob thinks he's crazy and he's about ready to clobber him with a shovel. That's another thing with these silent black and white films. The actors can sometimes go over the top with their acting and actions, kind of like Buster Keaton films. If the music doesn't keep the audience going, then the acting will. And instead of cutting the scenes of Scrooge viewing these images in the location, they are actually shown to him in his bedroom the whole time, so there's more special effects in this version of Scrooge seeing his past, present, and future. The film follows the novel very well, even the brief scene with misery and want is shown in the film, along with a few other things. So that's the 1910 version, a decent film that has managed to survive over the years. Now I know that there are other film adaptations of A Christmas Carol during that time period, but those two are the only ones I've managed to find so far. So, depending on which silent black and white version is the best film adaptation of A Christmas Carol, I'll have to say the 1910 one is probably the best one. The 1901 version was more of an experiment of making a film version of the novel, and it shows. It was quite the challenge, and although it might have been well received back then, it really doesn't hold up with today's standards. The 1910 version refines some of these problems, better acting, better scenery, and so on. So if you're in the mood of watching old black and white silent films this holiday season, or if you want to watch a different version of A Christmas Carol, then I say give the 1910 version a watch. You can easily find it on YouTube as there is no home video release for this film, or at least as far as I know. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media, so this is Melting Man 234 signing out. Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff on the island of forgotten Christmas specials. Well, this time it's going to be something interesting, because it's related to Doctor Who. Yes, Doctor Who, one of the most famous sci-fi series of them all. And since the series already celebrated its 50th anniversary, then I've already arrived late to the party. So consider this as a late tribute for the 50th anniversary. Now obviously the series won't be featured on Forgotten Media, but I've had people ask me to do the missing episodes or cancelled projects, and that's gonna be a while if I'll ever do that kind of stuff. I've only watched the episodes with the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith. Well, mostly. So as you can tell, I have a lot of catching up to do with the series, and getting a better idea of these topics, and knowing more about the previous incarnations of the Doctor, especially now that we're going to be introduced to the 12th Doctor. So for now, I'll be talking about a TV series that is very obscure, K9 and Company, the first Doctor Who spin-off that was released on BBC on December 28, 1981. There may not be much Christmassy stuff to do for this episode, but hey, it takes place during Christmas time, and K9 sings "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." So there, that's my excuse on why I'm featuring this as a Christmas special. The episode opens with probably the laziest intro I've seen. It just shows random pictures of Sarah and K9 while the intro music is playing. I will have to say that the music is kind of cool. It has that kind of vibe that only the 80s can do. So now it's time to talk about the first and only episode in this series, A Girl's Best Friend. The story focuses on Sarah Jane, one of the many companions of the Doctor, going to her aunt's to celebrate Christmas. However, she's gone to America and can't contact her by phone, and discovers a package left behind. So Sarah and Brandon Richards, another companion of the Doctor, unbox the crate, and of course, it's none other than our old pal K9. So Brendan and K9 have a good time expressing their interest with science and all that jazz, until he is captured by some thugs who happen to be members of a secret group of dark magic, and are planning to use Brendan as a human sacrifice. So now it's up to K9 and Sarah to save Brendan while uncovering the mysteries behind this organization. Now, I ain't no Doctor Who expert, but at least I know who some of these characters are, like Sarah Jane, who has had various adventures with the Doctor, and K9, the robot dog who has a laser cannon that sticks out, kind of like Pinocchio's nose. The other characters like Brendan, the nerdy student boy, I think, Sarah's aunt, who was mentioned several times in Doctor Who, or at least what I've heard from, makes her first physical appearance. Then you have some police guys and a gardener, and some guy with a dog, and so on. So if you're a Doctor Who fan and waiting for some epic explosions and extraordinary sci-fi adventures full of Daleks and Cybermen, then you'll be disappointed that this special has none of that stuff. The episode moves at a very slow pace, and K9 isn't introduced until 13 minutes into the film. Then after that it goes back to being slow again and kinda picks up during the climax. If it wasn't for the fact that a few Doctor Who characters were in this TV show, I say it looks like a drama mystery show, since that's what it is. People mysteriously disappear, and someone has to find out who did it. The settings are nice, and the acting is okay. The scenes at the organization's hideout create some dark environments, but it's all taking place next to an abandoned church. Sure, it's abandoned, but to me it just kinda feels out of place. Couldn't they have found a better hideout, like some kind of underground cavern or a cave? Not just out in the middle of the frickin' nowhere where they carry torches that can easily pinpoint their locations? Besides, Christianity and witchcraft don't go together. Since I'm not that familiar with Doctor Who, I have no idea on the continuity of the spin-off being connected to the TV series. So I'll just say it takes place during the times of the Fourth Doctor. The idea of having the Doctor's companions together to go on adventures isn't really a bad idea, it's just not that well put together in this film. Sarah and K9 spend the majority of the film together with Sarah's casual personality mixed in with K9's scientific mumbo-jumbo that sounds like something out of a Star Trek episode. There's also a lot of cutaways in this film, which kind of annoys me, and sometimes they can goof that up. In the scene where Sarah and K9 begin their search to find churches in the hopes of finding the organization's hideout, it first shows them in daylight, but then it cuts to them driving at night. What happened? Did the film pull off an Ed Wood move or something? Well, anyway, the series came and went, no network wanted to make this into a TV series, and it was never seen again. Eventually, the film was released onto VHS and later ported onto certain DVDs with other Doctor Who specials. The only other time you'd see Sarah and K9 together in the Doctor Who TV series was in the episode The Five Doctors, in which the Fifth Doctor meets his previous reincarnations of the past. The reactions for this spin-off weren't that well received, but there have been certain people that actually like the episode, so I guess it's one of those mixed opinion shows, kind of like the Geico Caveman show that I already covered. I personally think that hardcore Doctor Who fans, or Sarah Jane and K9 fans, would probably like this film. It's just like other obscure spin-offs like the Jeff Dunham Show or Napoleon Dynamite the animated series, which are more suited for hardcore fans. So in closing, K9 and Company was a failed attempt to make a spin-off to Doctor Who, but it eventually gave the creators some better ideas for better spin-offs, like having Sarah Jane have her own series that lasted for about 4 seasons, and eventually giving K9 another chance in having a proper TV series. But that's another story. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. Tune in next time where I'll... Hold on. This is episode 49. Wow, I didn't really expect to make it this far with the series. And you know what that means? The next episode will be the 50th episode special! Hey everyone, MeltingMan234 here, and welcome to the 50th episode special of Forgotten Media, where I talk about something very special on a certain occasion. Now, for the past 49 episodes that I've done, you've seen me talk about TV shows, video games, video game consoles, characters, canceled projects, and so on. So it's time to kick it up a notch with businesses and stores. This is a bit odd to feature this, since I've constantly been debating if this would work compared to my other sources of media. Well, there have been a lot of stores, restaurants, and companies that have been shut down over the years, and I've had some people ask me to do an episode on the history of LJN on Forgotten Media, so I think they deserve to be brought up in this series. So, in this episode, I'll be talking about a certain store that I personally remembered from my childhood, and it was actually one of the topics that I've wanted to do ever since I started the series, and that store happens to be Media Play. This was a chain of retail stores that was founded by a company called Musicland, and it first opened to the public in Rockford, Illinois in 1992, and it would later be opened to many other states and locations after that. So, what did this store sell? Well, almost anything you can think of. Movies, video games, books, music, merchandise, anime, instruments, as well as their own gift cards. They don't call this place Media Play for nothing. Even the logo represents what they sell. A book with an outline of a face with a music note as a pair of eyes, while a film strip is seen in the background. That's a pretty weird logo, but back then I thought it was awesome. I have some memories of this place because I used to have one around where I lived back in my youth. One of the things I remembered the most was seeing merchandise of Nightmare Before Christmas. It just blew my mind because I'd never seen merchandise of the film at a store before. I've gotten a few things there, like this action figure of the werewolf from the film, back when NECA was making the first action figures that were based off of the film. And I also got this cool poster too. The video game section was cool. My mind is a bit fuzzy about it, but I remember seeing a demo of Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex one time, and they had a giant cutouts of video game characters on a wall like Banjo-Kazooie. Whenever I went to that store, I always had to go to that wall with the giant cutouts and just marvel at its awesomeness. I also remember getting the first Harry Potter film and Nightmare Before Christmas on DVD before they were re-released in their special editions. Yeah, that was back in the days when DVDs were hitting the market, but they still sold some VHS tapes. The anime section was cool, since it was the first time I saw anime on home media, but I don't remember it that much, because the only anime that I watched when I was young was Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z on Toonami. Yeah, me and my sister used to do that a lot back then. During its run, Media Play was more of the underdog of the group at that time. Most of the time it felt like it was being sandwiched between other successful stores like Best Buy and Walmart and their competition against each other. And even online shopping was coming in like Amazon.com. So it seems like the store was still holding up despite the other more popular brands, but sadly the business wouldn't last forever. In 2001, Best Buy bought Musicland for about $700 million as a way to increase their entertainment products. That sounded like it would have helped out with what the market had to offer and expand the company. Unfortunately, it backfired, as in 2002, the business lost $85 million. So, with that punch to the stomach, the store was put up for sale. Musicland still owned the rights to Media Play, but they needed to find some kind of corporation to help keep the business going. They eventually found a corporation by the name of Sun Capital Partners, and they pretty much pitched in to help keep Media Play going, but not by much. It was practically unprofitable. So as the days went on, it felt like Media Play was on life support, and it was still going through with it, like a strong trooper through a blizzard. But on December of 2005, Musicland announced that all Media Play stores would be shut down and soon filed bankruptcy. So as you would guess, all Media Play stores were having clearance sales, selling everything for very low prices. They gotta get rid of this stuff one way or another. And so with one last purchase at that store, Media Play shut its doors in 2006 and was never seen again. Even though the store was shut down, the website they created still existed before it too was shut down. I was sad when the one that I had was closed, but I was even more depressed when they all closed down, every last one of them, and I'm sure fans of that store felt the same way as I did. Many years later, I soon discovered another store that was like Media Play called For Your Entertainment, or FYE for short. It's basically what the old store used to sell: movies, music, merchandise, anime, the works. I've heard that they've closed down a lot of stores over the years, but so far, it's not entirely defunct. This has become one of my favorite stores next to Play and Trade. It just feels like a reincarnation of Media Play, and ironically, most of the Media Play stores were replaced with FYE stores. There's not that many photographs or videos to showcase what media play was like inside the building, but there is a video on YouTube from a film student that made a rejected film project with interviews of employees and customers at media play right before it was shut down. It might not be the best documentary film, but it's nice to see that someone besides me who remembers the store is paying tribute to it, and I say it's worth a watch. The link to that video is in the description. In closing, Media Play was a great store, practically a store for nerds at that time. It might not have been one of the most popular brands, but it was a store worth visiting. If I ever created a time machine, whether it be a souped-up DeLorean or a camouflage TARDIS, one of my main goals would be to go back in time and revisit Media Play for old time's sake. And although the next generation of people will never experience what the store was like, at least for me and many others who have had the pleasure of going into that store, Media Play will always live on as a cherished memory. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. More episodes are on the way in the future, but for now, I have a lot of remodeling to do with this series. So, as always, this is Melting Man 234 signing out. Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here with a countdown list. Man, it's been years since I've done this stuff. After my previous countdowns failed miserably in the past, I've decided to do a proper countdown where I pull up subjects and explain why instead of just showing the stuff for no reason. So for this countdown, I'm going to do the top 10 forgotten media episodes that I will never do because they aren't that forgotten and people still talk about them and all that jazz. Now, I've already stated that I will not do Invader Zim because everybody knows what that show is, and how I won't do any of the Sonic TV shows because of the same reason. So I'm going to talk about certain topics that I won't do that either a lot of people have asked me to do, or just to point out certain ones, because I tend to be a bit picky with choosing subjects for forgotten media. So, this is the top 10 forgotten media episodes that I will never do! Number 10. Anything the Angry Video Game Nerd has already done. Now, I'm still having an arguing with myself moment on this subject, and probably the reason why it's low on the list. I think the reason I won't do anything that the Angry Video Game Nerd has already done is mainly because he does a better job than I do. It's like why Doug Walker didn't review TMNT 3 because James already covered everything about the film and had nothing more to add to it. So if I had plans to do an episode on the Atari 5200 or the NES accessories and posted it on YouTube, chances are the nerd would do it much better and covered everything about it since I don't have any of the expensive cables or connectors or any of that kind of expensive stuff. I've also had those days of saying, if I do something that the nerd has already done, then I might sound like the irate gamer, or that other guy no one talks about anymore. There's only been one exception in which I did, which was the Dark Castle series, which was released after the nerd did his take on it. But if you've seen the differences, the nerd only covered the Genesis and CDI ports, while I covered the full history of the games and only talked about the Macintosh ports since they were first released for that system. I've had a lot of people requesting me to do the history of LJN, which the AVGN has already talked a lot about, and I might do that because it was more than just a video game company, even though I don't think companies and businesses are part of medias, but hey, I've got plans for a 50th episode which talks about a company that was shut down long ago. So yeah, not sure about this one. I will say there's a good chance I won't do the Virtual Boy at Forgotten Media, because the nerd has covered almost everything about it. So if you want the full history on the Virtual Boy, go watch the nerd's video on it, because there's really nothing more that I can add to it. Number 9. Conker's Bad Fur Day. I have no idea why people have requested me to do this. I mean, come on, everybody knows who Conker is, and especially Conker's Bad Fur Day. It's that game where you play as a drunken squirrel and you blow stuff up, finding a giant monster made out of poop, meeting a sunflower with giant boobs, etc., etc. I think the reason why people have asked me to do this might because that the fact that Conker had other games besides that one that made him famous, like Conker Pocket Tales on the Game Boy Color and that canceled sequel, or maybe because of the fact that the company Rare is pretty much dead since they don't do anything anymore. So for Conker, I will only do his lesser-known games on Forgotten Media, since not many people have heard of Pocket Tales or any of the cancelled games. But I am not going to do Bad Fur Day or the remake on Forgotten Media, because the remake is just like the original, except for HD graphics and very stiff facial expressions. Number 8. Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, this one. When I did my cancelled Crash Games episode, I sarcastically said that I was going to do the series in like 5 or 10 years, which obviously I won't do. And it's mainly because it's Crash Bandicoot. Everybody knows about him. I've talked to some people that still know about the series and remember the characters. I recently started playing the games again like old times and having fun with that. But yeah, Crash will probably never be forgotten because of all the people who still remember him and talk about him. And the games are just tacked into our minds full of memories. Especially when everybody wanted Crash Bandicoot to be in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which will never happen. People still talk about how they played the Crash games and how they got into the series along with all these different rumors of a new Crash game. Like, I've mainly heard constant rumors of Activision trying to make a new Crash game, which most of them were either proven to be false or cancelled. There was also talk about Crash and Skylanders games because Activision owns both Crash and Spyro, so who knows. And then of course there was that mysterious Crash Bandicoot poster at Vicarious Visions, a company that worked on Crash Bandicoot games on the Game Boy Advance and also did Nitro Kart, but it was later to be revealed to be another cancelled Crash game. And then we had that, ooh, a new Crash Bandicoot game for the Wii U, PlayStation, and 360 that came from a website that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, that was obviously a fake. So even though the series is dead, it will never be truly abandoned. The only time I'm gonna bring up Crash Bandicoot again on Forgotten Media will have to be if I decide to do the 2-volume manga series that was only released in Japan. And for the people who still want a new Crash game, I say be patient and wait for the Crystal's Wrath to be released. Number 7. Rayman. Just like with Crash Bandicoot, Rayman is another one of those video game characters that isn't that forgotten. I really don't have much to say about Rayman because the explanations I gave to Crash are practically the same reasons for Rayman. The only thing related to Rayman that I might do on Forgotten Media is the animated series, which was a very short-lived TV show. But other than that, you got Origins and Legends to thank for Rayman's return, and not letting all those Raven Rabbits hog all the glory. Well, of course, Microsoft forced Ubisoft to delay Legends to make it multi-console like the greedy bastards that they are, but even with that small setback, it's not gonna make Rayman forgotten. Number 6. The Dreamcast. Now, I've had a few people ask me to do the Dreamcast, but again, everybody knows what that thing is. It was like Sega's last console before they became a third-party company, and it was more powerful than the N64. We got Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and so on and so on. I even got to play the Dreamcast for the first time when I went to my second anime convention a year ago and played a Japanese version of one of the Street Fighter games. Sega fans pretty much worship this console as the holy grail, just like how the classic Sonic fan brats worship the first Sonic game as God. It's like, oh mighty Dreamcast, you are so powerful, you are the master, umo gui gui vi ding dao. But yeah, when you think of Sonic Adventure, you immediately think of the Dreamcast, unless you played the GameCube port or playing it on the virtual consoles. I think the one Sega system I'll probably do on Forgotten Media will have to be the Sega Saturn, since that was a lesser-known console, but other than that, the Dreamcast is just too recognizable to be forgotten, especially when you get to play as one of the Dreamcast accessories in Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed. Yeah, I didn't see that character coming. Number 5. Fleetway Sonic the Comic. Now, I know what people were thinking on this subject. Hey, this was a Sonic comic series that was only released in the UK! The series ended when the company went out of business. No one has heard about these comics. This would be a perfect episode for Forgotten Media. However, there's one website that pretty much explains why I won't do the Fleetway Sonic series. Sonic the Comic Online. Basically, it's a website that continues the series from where it left off, and it's still going. They got new characters in there, like we got Cream, who wants to be a freedom fighter, and we also got Silver the Hedgehog, who was a member of Gun in the future, which is very different from the usual counterparts in the games. And people are gonna watch this and say, this doesn't count because it's not official! Well, the people who continue on with the series is like a small company, and even members who worked on the series back then have also helped them out. They even stated that Sonic the Comic Online to be unofficially official. So what they're saying is, if you want to see the series continue, then Sonic the Comic Online is your answer. And that's one of the rules I mainly stick with to when it comes to Forgotten Media. If a series is still going, or if a character is still alive and being used, then it's not forgotten. Even though there's a bit of a fan art, that doesn't count either. So if you want more Fleetway Sonic, go to Sonic the Comic Online and enjoy to your heart's content. I'll probably still get people yelling at me saying, it's not official, it's not official, it's not official, but again, somebody's keeping the series alive. Number 4. Dexter's Rude Removal. Shortest explanation for this one. I would have done this in the past, but then Adult Swim somehow managed to find it deep within the vaults of Cartoon Network, and now that they posted it on YouTube, the whole world knows about it, and it's no longer a lost episode. But they've also taken it down for some reason, but a lot of people have already downloaded it and posted it somewhere else. So yeah, no rude removal. Number 3. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. This is pretty similar to Conquer and Fleetway Sonic, but in a different way, because Oswald is no longer forgotten. I'm not sure why people have asked me this, because I'm like, come on, didn't you have Epic Mickey? We saw him back in action after all these years. He's not that forgotten anymore. I guess the reason why people have asked me to do Oswald is that they want to know how he ended up being forgotten. And I could do a video about that, but I won't, because I only talk about subjects that really are forgotten and we never see them again. I could have done Cartoon Planet, which was cancelled years ago, but then they brought it back, so I'm not going to do that one either. My main rules on characters on Forgotten Media is that if they're still using them and keeping the character alive, they're not forgotten. Characters I mainly consider forgotten are merely ones you don't see anymore, like KO the Kangaroo, the Combots, Rillaroo, and Croc from the Croc series, and so on and so on. I could have done Oswald like back in the past, but thanks to Epic Mickey and its new generation of fans, I'm not going to do Oswald. Number 2. Sonic characters that aren't that forgotten. It seems like I tend to get a few subjects related to Sonic that people tend to keep asking me about for Forgotten Media, and the forgotten Sonic characters is one of them. There are Sonic characters that are really forgotten, and ones that aren't really forgotten. The group of Sonic characters I will not do on Forgotten Media are Mighty the Armadillo, Ray the Flying Squirrel, Bart the Polar Bear, Bean the Dynamite, and Knack the Weasel, or Fang the Sniper if you want to call him by his Japanese name. These characters aren't forgotten anymore because of the Archie Sonic series. It's obvious that they're the only ones keeping the characters alive since Sega doesn't want them anymore. Knack is still going around doing stuff even though nobody knows what happened to his sister, Bark and Bean are still causing trouble, and Mighty and Ray just got done with a quest in finding Mighty's long-lost sister, who was a member of the Dark Egg Legion. There are also other characters besides the ones that I listed that might seem forgotten, like Vanilla the Rabbit, only seen in 3 Sonic games and in the Sonic X TV show. But she's not forgotten because, again, Archie Sonic universe. I could have done Max, March, and Sharps, which are characters that were going to be in Sonic's band in the first Sonic game, but they're not forgotten because, again, Archie Sonic universe. I could have done Honey the Cat, who was a scrapped character in Sonic the Fighters, but since they've re-released the game onto the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live, and actually featured her in the game, she doesn't count. Another one might be the Battlebird Cuckoo, that were only seen in Tails Adventure, but I won't do those because, again, Archie Sonic universe. Man, it seems like the Archie Sonic series really knows how to make good use of the characters that could have had potential in the games, but were quickly abandoned by Sega. And of course, I've usually said that Archie Sonic's on story and Sega Sonic's on gameplay. I think the Sonic characters I could do are the ones like Lumina, since nobody remembers that character, unless you remember torturing yourself with Sonic Shuffle, or Metal Sonic 3.0, who was only seen in Sonic Rivals 2. Of course, in the Archie Sonic universe, when they brought back the original Metal Sonic, now going by the name of Shard, his paint job pretty much looks like 3.0's. But anyway, I'm mainly not going to do Mighty, Ray, Bean, Bark, Knack, or Vanilla on Forgotten Media because of how they're still alive in the Archie Sonic series. A series made by a comic book company, yet Sega is the one that gives the orders and tells them what they can and cannot do. Otherwise, they'd be fired for not following their rules. And the number 1 Forgotten Media episode that I will never do is The Problem Solvers.
Why not?
Yeah, that's probably everyone's reaction from hearing this, since I tend to get a lot of requests on the subject. And I sometimes think if I get a lot of requests on a certain subject, then does it really make it forgotten? Now, for some reason, I'm mistaking this name for another show, which was called The Replacements. And I'm like, oh, you want me to do that? Sure, I can do that. But when I found out what the Problem Solvers really was, I decided not to do it. And it's not because I don't want to do it because I want to forget it, or it's so bad I don't want to do it, because those are some pretty poor excuses. Remember when I did Out of Jimmy's Head? I really didn't like it, yet I still did the episode with very little material to work with back then? I don't even know much about the Problem Solvers besides these ugly looking characters that do stuff. But the main reason I won't do it is that it's not cancelled, and that's the thing when I do forgotten TV shows. I only do ones that are cancelled, they no longer air, or have any reruns, with the exception of certain shows that are only seen in foreign countries, like I heard something about Evil Con Carne airing in Mexico and something else. A good example for a forgotten TV show would be the Forgotten Media episode of Project Geeker. Nobody remembers that show, even though there's a very small fan base and all the episodes are on iTunes. Besides, people still talk about how crappy the show is, and I've heard that they've been trying to get Season 2 to air, but they've been dealing with some network issues, and recently they showed a few reruns of the show on Cartoon Planet. Since they haven't announced that it's officially cancelled, it's pretty much stuck in development hell. This is a subject in media where they are stuck in development for so long, and that they are either released after all these years of work, or completely scrapped. And what's a good example of development hell? A co-op Forgotten Media episode of Super Robot Monkey Team, and Half-Life 2 Episode 3. Enough said. I also won't do anything that is in development hell, because it's not revealed whether it's going to be released or not. Remember when I made that old video years ago where I asked people if I should do Sonic the Hedgehog Who's Who Volume 1 on Forgotten Media? Yeah, it was in development for a long time, and I thought the company forgot all about it with the current stories and dealing with the Ken Penders lawsuit. But I quickly scrapped it, and we eventually got it under the name of the Complete Sonic Comic Encyclopedia, which I also happen to own. So that's all I have to say about Problem Solvers. Unless Cartoon Network or the creator of the series has officially announced that the series is cancelled, I will not do the Problem Solvers on Forgotten Media. So stop asking me to do it! Please. So that concludes my top 10 Forgotten Media episodes I will not do. And here are a few runner-uppers on other medias that I won't do. Code Lyoko, because a lot of people remember it, and of course it got Season 5 on its way. The History of Neo Geo. I would have done an episode on that, but since they've released the Neo Geo X, it's gonna be a while before it becomes forgotten again. Shaolin Showdown. Again, just like with Lyoko, you've already got a new series coming soon. Spyro the Dragon, because it's just like Crash Bandicoot and how it's not forgotten, even though you got that Skylander series, which doesn't even feel like a Spyro game. And that's all I can think of at the moment. I'm sure that there are other medias that I won't do, but you never know if I might do a part 2 to this list in the future. So until then, this is Melting Man 234 signing out.